Welcome to Hyperspace Prospector. I'll be talking about Black Spire by Delilah Dawson. I was wandering through a comic book store and I stumbled upon this. It said Black Spire. I bought it immediately, no questions asked. That may have been a mistake because this is apparently book 2 in a series and the first book was Phasma. They did a fairly decent job of getting everyone up to speed on the backstory. In fact, I didn't even figure out that there was a previous story. I thought they were just adding depth to the characters until about halfway through, and I was like, is there another novel? You really don't have to, I think, have read the previous book. It just probably adds a lot more detail to it. The author does a great job of making sure you know what's going on and why the characters are interacting with each other the way they are, but without being boring and just dumping exposition nonstop. The main reason I really wanted to read this is I'm a huge fan of Galaxy's Edge. So a book called Galaxy's Edge is going to end up on my bookshelf. As a result, I'm going to give a very brief review and then I'm going to dive into my favorite parts, which are mostly just tie-ins with Galaxy's Edge. I'll be honest. The story follows V, who is on the cover. I am very sure I ran into her at Galaxy's Edge the first time I went. This was really early on. I think the first year or so that it opened. At least there was a cast member who looked exactly like the description in this book. I didn't know who she was. I was just like, that is a really cool Resistance outfit. I love it. Looking back, I think I actually met V. She's a little bit like Cassian Andor in that she is an elite spy and fairly ruthless, but at the same time, a heart of gold. When it really comes down to it, she's going to do the right thing and try to help people. In fact, the nickname she gets by the end of this book is Mother Hen. Basically, she's been assigned by General Organa to find a new secure location that's kind of out in the middle of nowhere, but the First Order hasn't taken over yet, that Resistance pilots can kind of come, refuel, maybe get some drinks at the cantina, then get back out there. She's given all these supplies. It looks like it's going to be a super duper easy mission. And then her ship is shot down and she basically gets everything stolen and she ends up basically stranded on Batu with no credits. Fortunately, some of the locals are really friendly. They take her in. She kind of builds this found family. It's adorable. I love it. There's a whole other like force order going on. The gatherers. And then at the very end, it kind of ties in even more to Galaxy's Edge, which will make my next visit way more fun, knowing who owns what shop, what they're like, what their personality is like, who they're dating. Yes. We learn key information like the fact Oga of Oga's Cantina runs the town. She's like the Boba Fett of the town. And she has a thing for Wookiees. Yes. There is a whole scene where her Wookiee boyfriend is cheating on her with one of the waiters. And Oga comes out and like there's this whole scene. He's on the balcony. He's described as like his fur is all messed up, if you get what I mean. And Oga is furious and they're like shouting back and forth. Hatiz versus Sherwook and it's like it's like this incredibly detailed scene about her and her boyfriend. Let's just say you can't unsee it. Next time I go to Galaxy's Edge, I'm going to ask at least a few cast members, like, what's the tea? What Wookiee is Oga currently dating? The story is a combination of some really hilarious moments, absolute nostalgia for any of us who go to Disneyland, and some quite compelling moments. Tons of action adventure. I mean, we're talking Indiana Jones level, running through ancient temples level of adventure. And then some really interesting, heartfelt moments between characters, especially towards the end. Very satisfying but also tragic ending. Is it worth reading this book if you have no familiarity with Disneyland? Absolutely yes. It might be more of a just quick read for you of, oh, this is a fun story, other than, of course, the torture scenes, which get very terrifying. That thing with her eye when he was like, oh, I could barely read it. I was just like, oh, really do not like the First Order. But it might not have the same emotional impact as it had for me. All right, I have so much stuff bookmarked, it's not even funny. All of us know bright suns or rising moons is your greeting, depending on the time of day. This one is how you say goodbye. May the spires keep you. And also, another one you can say is good trade after you've done some sort of transaction. So let's say you went to get your Ronto wrap and you go to pick it up at mobile order. You'd walk up and you'd be like, yes, I'm order 66. And they would be like, okay, yes, that matches. Here's your Ronto wrap. One thing you can say to the cast member is, thank you, good trade, as you walk away with it. The delectable scent of roasting meat continued tickling her nose, drawing her forward, and she knew she had made the right choice. So we call the owner the butcher, but his real name is Bakar, Selju told her. So again, if you want to be super nerdy, next time you go to pick up your Ronto wrap, you can be like, ooh, this looks so good. Tell the butcher, thank you. It's amazing. Or after you eat your Ronto wrap, you want to go up to the Ronto roasters and be like, I just finished my wrap. It was so good. Can you tell the butcher just like 5 stars today? I think my favorite part, this is so bad, was the explanation of the rules by the cantina. So I talked about this a little bit in my Galaxy's Edge vlog, where I read out all the rules. Keep your Kawaki and monkey lizards under control and stuff like that. They seemed awfully specific. No staring, no fighting, no biting or ripping off of limbs. A lot of rules for one cantina, V said cautiously. There's a local joke about how all these things happened in one night, and Oga grew very angry and wrote out the rules to make sure it never happened again. V raised an eyebrow. In one night? I love that we got the story behind those rules. Okay, on to the milk stand. First of all, are you team blue milk or green milk? Post in the comments. The milk stand was run by an Aqualish farmer named Bubo Wamba, who was new to the planet. Now, this was very interesting. Why? Because we know from the High Republic books that there was a milk stand there. So this means the milk stand itself is ancient. So that's why when you walk by, everything looks sort of old and run down where the milk stand is. But you know it's really nice, fresh, delectable drinks. It's under new management. This one I had to make a note of just because of the name of this channel. Savi is kind of a behind the scenes supporter of the Resistance. He's a friend of the Santekas, which means he's also a friend of the Jedi. We decided it was our calling to keep the Force in balance. It's not mine to choose others' paths for them, but I believe in supporting those who are strong in the Force, who are fighting for the same ideals. And we see this come up over and over in the story of how he and the Santekas are allies and they really want to support what's left, the remnants of the Jedi Order. Her droid is named Pook and is mildly malfunctioning, which is always the best kind of droid because there's no filter. Which means the comedy is off the charts. Again, very Rogue One. V is trying to make a good impression with the locals, and she's trying to recruit them to the cause of the Resistance. She puts a grin back on her face and waves and murmurs, "Bright suns!" The suns are not particularly bright today, Pook said. Only your species would walk around lying to everyone you met as an exercise in local color. It is so utterly tiresome. And she goes, "You're a droid, Pook. You can't get tired." Watch me. I just love these two. They have great interactions. It is worth reading the book just for that. We also get a reference to Docking Bay 7 Food and Cargo. This one is run by Cookie, who's only there 1 week out of the month. So basically, for about 6 days, the food is amazing. But the rest of the month, when Cookie's not there and just his underlings are running things, the food's not great. There's usually some cast members hanging out there, and you can walk up and go, "Hi, is Tug's Grub Freighter here? I mean, is Cookie the chef today, or is it someone else?" 90% of the time, the cast members won't know what you're talking about, but there is a 10% level of people who work at Galaxy's Edge who are super nerdy and wonderful, and I love them so much, and I will talk to them as long as they'll put up with me, who know the nuanced detail of Galaxy's Edge. And if you can find one of those people and talk to them about stuff like this, whoo, it is fun. One of my best interactions ever, unfortunately not on camera, was I was sitting near Ronta's Roasters and eating, and there were no chairs. So I was like perched on one of the stone garden walls. A cast member came by and was picking up garbage. And he saw me, I was just like sitting there by myself. So he wandered by. I was like, "Hey, what planet are you here from?" And me being me, I just started making stuff up. So I was like, "Oh, yeah, I'm in from Naboo. I'm just here for a few days and then my transport leaves." I think he figured out I was perfectly happy being in character. So I think we talked for like 5 minutes about just in universe stuff as if we were there. And so that would have been a great person to ask questions of like, "Hey, is Cookie the one who's the chef at Docking Bay 7 right now, or is he off again?" All right, another phrase for you. This one is a toast to use at the cantina. "Now, until the Spire." The antiquities shop. This was an interesting section. He's not on the level. Mm-mm. Watch out for Doc Andar, who runs the antiquities shop. He's been here longer than Oga, and he's ruthless. If you get on his bad side, what the locals call the dock list, your days are numbered. He is more interested in artifacts for power and possibly for evil. So he's like the rival of the gatherers who are trying to bring balance to the force and definitely a little bit more team light side. He's a little bit more, I wouldn't really mess around with him, stay out of his way. I also learned they have cenotes there. I've been to Mexico a few times, and yes, they are gorgeous. So when they're talking about all the Black Spire outpost cenotes, I was just like, ooh, that sounds so cool. Even though there's none at Disneyland, I can picture that in my head, and next time I'm there, I can kind of pretend that they exist. Back to the Indiana Jones section of sneaking through ancient trapped temples. She comes across these venomous freshwater kind of glass anemones, and then she references that they had them on Naboo. These are instant kill creatures, meaning if you put your hand in that pool of water, you're dead. And they're clear, so you can't see them very easily unless you're looking for them. I always kind of go, Naboo is my homeworld in Star Wars. So note to self, if I'm on Naboo before you go swimming in that beautiful lake, in the Lake District, maybe check with the locals and see if it's safe. Going back to the Gatherers, who's run by Savi, his kind of second in command is Yelena, and she had this to say about how they end up hiring people, aka finding others to join their group. There are people who stir the pot for personal gain, And then there are people who cause trouble because they have a higher calling. Savi can tell the difference. We all can. You have the gleam. That's what we call it when the force has taken a shine to someone. It's a little like an aura. It doesn't lie. And you have it. We've seen this talked about briefly throughout the Star Wars universe, including Rogue One, as a matter of fact. The Force moves darkly around a creature that's about to kill. A lot of people have just enough of an M count or have done the work to raise their Force sensitivity to read the Force's aura around people. We mostly hear it talking about darkness, of you look at someone and go, ooh, they're dangerous. But here it's talking about the opposite. That special kind of person who is selfless will literally glow to someone who's sensitive enough. And you're able to walk around in your life and recognize the people who are glowing. And they're the people you want in your life. The locals don't say Black Spire or Black Spire Outpost. They say BSO. The easiest way to use this is when you're in other parts of Disneyland. Let's say you're in the Enchanted Kingdom and someone comes up to you and is like, do you happen to know where the Star Wars area is? How do you get in there? I go, oh, yeah. BSO is right down that road, and then you turn left with the planet that has the reddish rocks that has the train. And BSO is right through there. Now, you might just confuse them further, but it would be a really fun thing to do because that is exactly what a Black Spire Outpost person would be doing, helping them out, but also using so much local slang that they can barely understand you. There's also a little signpost, as I recall, that's like the old outpost is that direction. And it's, of course, where Rise of the Resistance is, aka where V built her base. This old outpost used to be full of these very dangerous traps. And so if you're in line and you're bored, because the line is very long, you can start being like, I don't think they actually finished taking all the traps out. What if those flesh eating bugs suddenly erupt out of that wall? Things to think about to entertain yourself in line. If you're feeling particularly snarky and someone says bright suns to you and you're having a terrible day, one of the characters says this in response. Maybe they're bright and maybe they're not. There's a BSO insult for you. Maybe the suns are bright and maybe they're not. Another cool piece of local color are the crank bikes. Now, these are kind of Nihil-esque in that the locals take just kind of bits and pieces sitting around and they make these horrendously awful bikes. These are not your normal speeder bikes. Oh no. They are loud, they are obnoxious, they are smelly, they look like a junk heap got glued together. And everyone has them. It's like a thing. So if you need a topic, again, to bring up to someone else in line or to a cast member, you can ask them how their crank bike repair is going. Because everyone's going to be constantly repairing it or enhancing it. I'm mostly talking about how to interact with people who are Batuan residents. But what if you want to talk to the stormtroopers? They are the 709th Legion of elite stormtroopers chosen by Kylo himself. Next time a trooper comes up and is like, what are you doing on that datapad? You can be like, oh, well, I'm documenting the glory of the First Order. And of course, everyone back home on Naboo wants to know what it's like to watch the great 709th Legion in action. I mean, you were chosen by Kylo himself. You must be the best of the best. And trust me, they'll go, good work, citizen. Carry on and walk away. Hopefully, some of that was helpful. If you were here about the book itself, read it. Great story. If you were here for the Galaxy's Edge side, I'm so excited to put this knowledge to use. I apologize in advance to the poor cast members. I promise I won't take more than a minute of your time. For a totally unplanned purchase, I think this worked out really well. And I look forward to checking out Phasma. Till the Spires.